In this video, I'm going to show you how I painted this statue from Cardosa 3D. This is Groundeffected. My name is your dad, and welcome to stepping in a puddle and wetting your socks on your way to work. Now, I was contacted by Cardosa 3D on one of the social medias, and he said, we should do a little bit of a collaboration thing there. What do you think, son? And I said, yes, sir. Let us do this thing. And the thing that we did was this Spiderman 2099. Of course, if you don't like Spiderman, I don't care. There is a very specific information for you in the last few seconds of this video. But before we get into that, make sure to leave a like and some words, because we need words, in the bottom of the video in the small little square space. Let's just get on with the video. Oh, and by the way, there will be a link for Cardosa's 3D to Patreon in the description below. This video is probably a little bit different because I'm not actually starting out with a black. I am. That's a lie. I probably lied to you. I started out with black on everything else except for that little cape thing on his back. And basically I just sprayed a smoke color on that. Working on the base, I started by just adding in the colors on the A that is on the base. There is a letter on this base and it is the letter A. At least that's what I think it is. I have no actual idea what it is, but we will say it's the letter A for now. It has this cool transition from blue to like green, and I used fluoro green for that because I thought it would look fantastic. Now something a little bit different, which is dry brushing this. Usually you would use a light color, but actually in the renders, this was quite a dark color. It's like it's made of concrete and the edges have been pulled off of the paint or something. I'm not really sure, but it's basically, it needs to be darker, and so I basically made it darker. I say basically a lot, and I'm gonna try to stop saying that. When I was done painting that rebar that is sticking out of the letter A, I then decided it was time to start painting the dry brush coats on the actual base of this model. I started out with a lighter grey just so that when I added the color on top of this, it would have a slightly lighter base color. This would make that color a little bit more vibrant. I painted anything that was on the base that wasn't actually a rock in a black color so that I could then come back and give this a different color later. Using a dark shade, I'm going to shade all the crevasses of this rock so that it can have darker crevasses. Why else would you shade them? Also, if you noticed, I glued these things together at this point. This was when I decided that I needed to break it up a little bit more, and I added some of this typhus corrosion on certain parts of this rock that didn't actually look like it was the rock, and it looked like something different. I also added a load of powders on this one. Powders are still something that I think is a dark magic, and I'm not quite sure how to use them. They make a mess everywhere, and when you wet them, they make even more of a mess. And so, in order to stop myself from dying from the mess, I gave it a clear coat to just protect it and not have any mess on everything else. I also needed to paint this sign for Alchem, which is on the base as well, that needed to pretty much get a brass tone look to it, and then the letters themselves needed to be a different color. It's a whole nightmare, and I figured this was the easiest way of doing it. I gave the whole piece a brass color, and when I was done with the brass color, I came back and used Monument Hobbies dark silver to paint over all the letters because this color covers extremely well. A little bit of water and it thins down magically, and you can just friggin' paint over everything, and this is the easiest way. I wouldn't have gone the other way because it would not have worked. It was at this point that I noticed that I had made a boo-boo, and my printer printed like a little bit of poo-poo. So I had to then sand these pieces away because the boo-boo was not so good. I also filled up the gaps with some resin. I just took some resin out of my vat and I literally poured that into the little gaps and I lit it with my special light from my wash and cure station. I then gave that a black primer layer, and while that was drying I came back to this base letter thing and gave it a bit of a shade. This video is a collaboration between myself and Cardosa 3D. And so basically, those who are already in the highest tier on my Patreon will be receiving this STL file for their own 3D printing. However, if you are not already in that tier on my Patreon and you're thinking of getting this file, don't join that tier because you will not get the file. The best thing you can do is go join Cardosa 3D's Patreon to get this specific file. And the reason I've done this is because I don't want to take away any of the earnings from the artists themselves, but I do want to still give back to those who've been supporting at the highest tiers on my Patreon. I hope all of this makes sense to you, because in my brain it makes sense. On the video, maybe not so much. It is enough waffling. Let's get straight into the video. I feel like I regret this step a little bit. Not too much, but I do regret it a little bit. Either way, I did it, it happened, and we'll just move on from there. I then used some epoxy to glue the picture onto the bottom of this print, because why would you make a statue if you're not going to make a picture that no one will ever see? That's the way I feel about this. It's at the end of the day, you want a picture that no one will see. That way you feel happy in your heart that you added the picture there. That's also a lie. I'm lying a lot in this video. The reason I add the picture is because I can't be asked to actually fill those holes in the bottom of the statue, and this seems so much easier to me. Now you can see I'm dry brushing a couple of areas over the top of the Alchem logo, and that is just to bring out some of the edges so it's not so flat and dirty. Here's where you can see the picture on my base. This is the first and last time you will see it, and nobody will ever know that it is there. That's my favorite part about it. Now I need to paint friggin' Spidey on top, and I want to give him a zenithal highlight, so the best way to do this is to mask everything off. And in my case, I just used some cling film to do that, and I built Spidey on top of this cling filmed monstrosity. Because this way, I can give him the zenithal highlight in the pose that he's in without actually getting any paint on the base. It's also kind of like a free holder. If you use the base, you don't have to use all the friggin' sticks in the holes, and it's much easier. This doesn't work for all models, but it does work very well for this one. Now I'm going to give him a space marine color. That is also a lie. I keep doing this, but I do use this exact same method for my space marines. However, in this case, I'm going to use it a little bit differently. I'm going to add a lot more of the blue ink and a little bit less of the Thalasar blue contrast paint. I do layer the Thalasar a couple more layers because this will give you a more vibrant, darker blue. Less layers will make it lighter and very like soft blue. So you can use this many different ways. I really actually like this method, and if you ever need to do something blue and you need it to stand out like a very sore thumb, this is one of the ways you can do it. I then took some Drakenhof Nightshade and painted that into all the crevasses on the suit that needed to be slightly darker. The nice thing about this shade is that when it dries it goes matte, and it also goes quite dark, so it does tend to be very different looking to the rest of the colors on the suit. And basically that's some free shading on the suit. Next steps, it was time to start adding the line that goes around the suit. There's a line of beading all around the suit all over, and I used blue and black mixed together just to create a darker color for that beading so that it stood off the rest of the suit. And then for the other Spidey trimmings that are on him, I used white first because red is one of the worst colors to cover anything with. So I used white in probably 2, maybe even 3 layers in some areas, to make sure that there was a really light base coat for me to use a red over the top of that. And the red that I used was Bile Red, which is a contrast paint, but it is super bright. It's such a nice red, especially for this. It needs to look really like cyberpunky because he's kind of like a Spiderman from the future, you know, like apparently we're all going to be covered in neons. Well, to be fair, if you've watched any streams or anything on the internet lately, everybody uses RGBs, which is kind of like neon, but it's not neon. And basically, they weren't wrong when they said that we're all going to be living. Okay, enough of that. Let me just carry on with what I was doing. I went into the rest of the suit and added all those darker lines that go throughout the rest of the suit. Again, you don't have to do this if you're feeling not confident enough, but it's a really simple thing to do. It's so easy to do. You just take your time doing this and it adds just a little extra layer of depth to your suit. And here is me putting on the white base coats again over the arms, and I'll do this on the body as well. One of the things with this white layer, you don't want to slap this on too thick, because if it's thick, it's not going to look very nice. You're going to end up having brush strokes and things like that. You don't want any of that in your piece, so thin it down quite a bit and just do a couple of layers. If it takes you an extra 2 or 3 hours, so be it. At least your model will look better. One thing I can say about the contrast paints is they're terrifying to use over large flat areas because you have to use them wet. You can't paint just a very thin little layer and then add another. No, because they will double up and then you'll have different layered colors. It's no good like that. You have to paint them in one solid layer basically. So do be careful about that. Otherwise, the color that this Bile Red gives is honestly super freaking bright. And since this model is going on my shelf and not being shipped anywhere, I didn't put any magnets in him. I just decided to glue his arms and his legs together, and I just put him on the base with his feet just through the pegs. And that was pretty much where I decided to call this model done. Hopefully you've managed to take something out of this video that will help you make your own statue or 3D printed thing in the future. And by make, what I mean is paint, because this video was mostly about painting, as are many of my other videos. And if you don't know this, it takes a lot of time to make and create these videos that you may be watching and enjoying. Of course, if you enjoy these videos and you want to see more, the best way to support the channel is by clicking the little button that looks like a thumbs up and sharing the video with your gram. The other way you can support me is by joining the Patreon. The thing that many people don't know is it may look like I live a very lavish life, however, I don't. And this is because I am working mostly on my YouTube and not on my job, the real job that I have, which actually pays for me to live my life. So if you want to see more videos and make sure that I'm able to continue making videos, then Patreon is the best place for you, because that will help me pay for lunch on the days where my actual job isn't paying me because I'm making models instead of working. Now, of course, on the topic of Patreons, I want to thank the latest patrons we've got recently. Katja Henselit, James Miller, and Mark Burgess. Thank you, my dudes. Because of your assistance, I can keep the lines blinding marbles, as well as get lunch sometimes. And speaking of lunch, I'm busy working on a little lunchbox man carrier in the background, as you can see, and I hope you're excited to see that video as well. Now that we've got the entire video all over and finished with, let's get to the best part of any video that I could ever possibly make. If you didn't like anything you saw in this video, the best thing you can do for yourself is actually to just fuck off. Now I'm gonna go shoot fire out of a plastic toy and hope nothing burns down. Wish me luck.